The courtroom fell silent the moment he walked in, the police chief with a smile sharp enough to slice through the tension. He didn't just enter, he claimed the room, dropping his badge on the table like it was a crown. When he talked over the judge, the audience flinched. When he laughed at her warning, even the cameras hesitated. 30 seconds later, that laugh disappeared, and so did his career. The badge hits the desk with a metallic thud that slices through the quiet. He drops into the chair like it belongs to him, and when he leans back, the courtroom seems to tilt around his confidence. The police chief does not simply sit, he occupies. His posture is a declaration, a warning, and a performance delivered for every pair of eyes watching. The fluorescent courtroom lights catch the shine of his uniform pins, turning them into small flashes of arrogance. The camera mounted in the corner adjusts, its motor humming softly, almost like it is preparing for the storm. Judge Judy studies him without expression. Her gaze is steady, not sharp, not confrontational, just observant, the way someone watches a wild animal to see if it is posturing or preparing to strike. She does not speak at first. She lets the silence settle. And it does, like dust on an undisturbed surface. The victim, a quiet woman seated at the plaintiff's table, clutches her paperwork as if afraid it might slip from her hands and fall into the wrong world. Her eyes move between the chief and the judge, searching for a sign of safety. None arrives yet. The chief glances at her just long enough to make his point, a warning disguised as a smirk. The kind of look only people used to power dare to give. His voice breaks the calm before the judge can begin. "Let's make this quick," he says, waving one hand dismissively. "I have a department to run." The audience flinches. Not because of the words, but because of the tone. The casual disrespect aimed straight at the bench. Judge Judy raises her chin slightly, a barely perceptible movement, but enough to shift the energy. She does not admonish him. She does not correct him. She just looks. The narrator, the camera that sees everything, lingers on the chief's hands. Strong hands, confident hands, but restless. His fingers drum against the table, a quick, irritated rhythm. People who feel safe do not fidget. People who believe they are untouchable do not blink twice, the way he just did. "Chief," Judge Judy begins, her voice calm enough to cool the air, "we will proceed with order today. You will speak when addressed. You will listen when required." He laughs, a short, arrogant burst that echoes off the wooden panels. "Judge, with all respect," she lifts one finger, not for silence, but for clarity. "Chief," she repeats, "that was not a request." His smirk flickers, just slightly, just enough for the victim to breathe for the first time since he entered the room. As Judge Judy opens the file, a single page slides forward, curling up at the edge like it wants to be seen. The chief's eyes dart to it immediately, too quickly, too intensely, as if that page carries something he desperately hoped would stay buried. The judge pauses, fingertips resting on that page, and says quietly, "Interesting, very interesting." His smile stays, but something in it collapses, a small, silent fracture. He sits straighter, pretending nothing has shifted, but the room already feels the wobble in his confidence. Judge Judy does not lift her eyes at first. She turns the page slowly as though giving the truth time to breathe. The soft rustle of paper becomes the only sound, and even that seems too loud for the moment. The chief forces a relaxed posture, shoulders back, arms spread across the table in a display meant to reclaim dominance. But the tap of his heel on the floor betrays him, a quick, irritated beat like a pulse, fighting to stay steady. "Chief," the judge begins, her tone steady as a surgeon's hand. "Your statement notes that the incident occurred at 8:42 p.m. His response is immediate, too immediate. "Correct." Her eyes lift now, quiet and sharp in the same second. "Are you certain?" A ripple runs through the audience, a shared breath, a shared question. The chief grins, leaning forward, elbows on the desk like he's about to negotiate, not testify. "Judge, I wrote the report myself. I think I know what time it was." But arrogance always tries too hard. His voice is just a shade too loud, his confidence just a little too polished. People who tell the truth do not overcompensate. The narrator observes him carefully, the way his pupils tighten, the way he swallows once before smirking again. Not fear, not yet. Just the beginning of recognition, control slipping, inch by inch. The victim breathes in softly, summoning courage. When she speaks, her voice trembles but holds shape. Your Honor, I remember it being earlier than that. I checked the clock. I was scared, but I looked. She stops, glancing at the chief, as if expecting him to interrupt. He does. Ma'am, with all respect, you were emotional. You misremembered. It is a soft insult, wrapped in professional courtesy, but the judge hears the blade beneath it. Chief, she says calmly, you will not diminish her recollection simply because it contradicts yours. He raises his hands in surrender, fake and dramatic. I am not diminishing anything. I'm just saying emotions make people unreliable. That line lingers in the air, heavy like a piece of dust lit by a courtroom spotlight, impossible to ignore. Judge Judy tilts her head, the slightest shift, but powerful enough to silence even his tapping foot. Is that your professional assessment? He opens his mouth, then closes it, suddenly aware of how those words sounded. The audience shifts collectively, sensing where the judge is steering. She turns another page. A crisp official document sits beneath her fingertips, its timestamp bold enough for everyone to see, even from a distance. Chief, she says, voice low but unwavering, were you aware that the dispatch call logs have a recorded time that does not match your report? His smile freezes, his posture tightens, his breath pauses. The victim looks down, as though afraid the truth might be too heavy to stare at directly. Judge Judy sets the document aside, not revealing the details yet, letting the tension stretch, letting the chief feel the weight of what he cannot yet see. She closes the file gently and says, before we continue, there is a piece of evidence you did not expect to be here today. The loose page slides out like it has been waiting for its moment. It lands face up, its corner bent, its ink unmistakably official. And the chief's eyes lock onto it too fast, far too fast. Judge Judy does not reach for the page right away. She lets it rest between them like an accusation that has finally stepped into the light. The courtroom air shifts, not dramatically, but subtly, like a draft slipping under a closed door, enough for everyone to feel something is wrong. The chief leans forward half an inch before catching himself, but the damage is done. People do not lunge toward harmless paper. They lunge toward secrets. The narrator watches his expression carefully, the twitch at the corner of his mouth, the tightening under his eyes, the way one hand drifts toward the page as though guided by instinct, not intention. His polished confidence dulls at the edges. Let us take a look, Judge Judy says softly, almost too softly. She lifts the page with delicate precision, as if afraid the truth might crumble under pressure. The courtroom lights catch on the top line of text, a timestamp, bold and clean. The victim sits straighter, her breath catching in her throat, eyes glued to the judge's hands. Chief, Judge Judy says, eyes scanning the words, you filed a supplemental report? The chief laughs, not a real laugh, but the empty kind people use when they're building a wall out of noise. Your Honor, that is just a draft, an early version, not important. She raises one eyebrow a fraction, enough to dim the laughter instantly. A draft you chose not to provide to the court, he swallows. It was irrelevant. Judge Judy lays the page flat on the bench, her fingertips tracing the margins. Interesting definition of irrelevant. The victim's voice breaks the silence, small and fragile. I've seen that page before. All eyes turn to her. Even the chief freezes. She points gently at the document. That is the form the officer showed me when I asked for a copy. I remember the handwriting. And the time is different from what he wrote in the final report. The chief shifts, the chair creaking beneath him, the kind of sound that reveals more than words. His jaw moves once as if chewing on the urge to respond, to snap, to control the narrative again. Judge Judy's gaze settles on him, unwavering. Chief, would you like to explain the discrepancy? He clears his throat. Your Honor, drafts change. That is why they are called drafts. The narrator senses the unraveling, slow, quiet, inevitable. The chief's shoulders stiffen, his fingers curl inward, the facade beginning to fracture under its own weight. Judge Judy turns the page over. A handwritten note sits near the bottom, a line circled twice, an arrow pointing to a rewritten time. The victim covers her mouth with her hand. The judge's voice is calm, controlled. Chief, you wrote this time first, but your final report shows something different. He says nothing. Silence suddenly feels loud enough to echo. Judge Judy lifts her eyes and asks, "Tell me, Chief, which time is the truth?" He answers too quickly, the kind of speed only fear can produce. Confidence is sharp. Panic is fast. And this answer cuts through the air like a mistake he cannot take back. The reported time is the truth, the chief snaps, not even waiting for the judge to finish the question. His voice barrels forward with manufactured certainty, but the edges wobble, thin as cracking ice. The courtroom feels it, a subtle shift, a tremor beneath the sound. People instinctively lean in, the way audiences do when they sense a lie wrapped in confidence. Judge Judy does not react. Her stillness is its own kind of authority, the kind that makes the chief's bravado look childish. She folds her hands, letting silence bloom in the space between his answer and her stare, a silence that exposes more than any question could. "Interesting," she says at last. "You seem very certain." The chief leans back again, reclaiming his rehearsed composure. "Your Honor, I have been writing reports for 25 years. I know what I'm doing." He means it as a boast. It lands like an admission, because only someone protecting something speaks with that much heat. The victim watches him quietly, her fingers trembling around her notebook. The narrator captures the moment the truth grazes her expression, recognition. She has heard this tone before, not confidence, defense. Judge Judy turns to the official dispatch logs. The room tenses. The lights seem to sharpen, focusing on the lines of printed numbers. She angles the page slightly, enough to read without rushing. "Chief," she begins, "according to the dispatch call log submitted to this court by your department, the initial call was logged at 8:21 p.m. The chief's jaw flexes, a tiny involuntary movement. "The logs are wrong," he blurts, wrong answer, the kind that exposes a crack widening from inside. Judge Judy lifts her eyes, pinning him with the kind of calm stare that unmasks people more thoroughly than shouting ever could. "Are you telling this court that the timestamp digital logs are incorrect, but your handwritten report, which appears to have multiple revisions, is correct?" His throat tightens. He tries to smile, but it flickers like a bad signal. "With respect, Your Honor, You said earlier you were certain," she interjects softly, "and yet now you seem uncertain." A quiet murmur rolls across the courtroom benches. Even the cameras seem to adjust, zooming slightly as though they smell the truth bruising its way to the surface. The chief sputters, searching for footing that does not exist. "Look, the woman was confused. She was emotional. I was trying to keep the report clean." Judge Judy does not let him finish. Her gavel remains untouched, but her voice carries the same authority. "Clean reports do not require altered times." His face stills. Everything inside him seems to pause, suspended on the edge of exposure. Then she reaches into the file again, slowly, deliberately. "Chief," she says, sliding out a second document, "there is something else, something your department submitted directly." He freezes. A flicker of real fear dances behind his practiced expression. Judge Judy lays the document flat, revealing the department's own internal log with a matching timestamp, 8:21 p.m., identical to the dispatch record. The room inhales as one. Truth is not quiet now. It roars. Judge Judy looks him dead in the eyes and says, "This report proves the time you testified to is a lie." He reaches for his badge, almost instinctively, then stops. For the first time, it does not feel like a shield. It feels like weight. The courtroom does not move, not a breath, not a whisper. Even the overhead lights seem to hum more quietly, as if waiting to see whether the truth will settle or explode. The chief sits frozen, the muscles in his jaw twitching as he stares at the document that contradicts his testimony. His badge glints on the table beside him, but the shine now feels more like accusation than honor. Judge Judy folds her hands neatly, her posture calm, composed, and devastatingly steady. "Chief," she says, "you offered a time that conflicts with two separate official records, both submitted by your own department. Would you like to explain that?" His mouth opens, but no words appear. Instead, he clears his throat, too loudly, too sharply, filling the silence with the sound of panic disguised as irritation. With all respect, he begins, voice brittle at the edges. Reports are complicated. Sometimes things shift during the process. Shift, Judge Judy repeats, the word soft yet piercing. Is that your official term for falsifying details? He bristles. His shoulders pull tight, his chest rises, and the authority he wears like armor begins to feel suffocating. Judge, you're misinterpreting you're twisting this into something it's not. The victim watches him with a quiet steadiness that has grown over the course of the hearing. Her fear has begun to erode, replaced by something calmer, deeper, a sense of long-awaited validation. The chief notices her gaze and snaps, "Do not look at me like that. You do not understand police work." It is a slip, an emotional crack loud enough to echo. Judge Judy's expression cools. "Chief, you will not speak to her that way in my courtroom." He exhales sharply, leaning back. "I am being attacked, Your Honor. I can feel it. This is political. It has to be." The narrator catches the shifting gravity in the room, arrogance fighting with desperation, truth pressing in like rising water. The chief's hand drifts again toward his badge, fingers brushing metal. But the symbol no longer reassures him. It weighs him down, as though the truth itself is tugging at it. Judge Judy does not let the moment slide. "Chief, your claim of political attack is noted. Now answer the question. Why did your final report alter the time of the incident?" He hesitates. It hangs there, a second, then two, a pause so full of fear it might burst. Finally, he forces a thin, strained smile. "Because the original time was wrong, the officers must have misread their clocks." The courtroom reacts instantly, a wave of murmurs, too bold, too careless, too improbable. Judge Judy lifts a hand and the room stills. "Chief, 3 officers, 1 dispatch system, 1 internal log, and all of them misread the time?" His silence answers for him. Then the judge glances toward the bailiff. "Please bring in the next witness." The chief's eyes snap toward the door. A flash of unease crosses his face, brief but unmistakable. Judge Judy adds, her voice quiet but loaded with certainty, "This witness will help us understand exactly what shifted and why." The side door opens with a slow, weighted creak. The chief's face drains of color before the witness even steps inside. Some truths do not need introduction. They announce themselves. A young officer appears in the doorway, uniform slightly wrinkled, posture uncertain. He's not the kind of man who belongs in a spotlight. His eyes dart toward the chief, then immediately away, as though eye contact itself might be dangerous. The courtroom absorbs his fear like a sponge, and the air thickens. Judge Judy offers him a small, grounding nod. "Officer, come forward." He approaches the stand with the careful steps of someone crossing thin ice. The chief shifts in his seat, jaw clenched, fingers tapping at the table again. That same impatience, but now sharpened by something rawer. Not power, not confidence, fear. The narrator watches the tension coil between the two men, a line stretched so tight that one wrong word might snap it. The officer grips the edges of the witness stand, knuckles pale. "State your name and position," Judge Judy instructs. His voice cracks slightly on the first word. "Officer Daniel Ruiz, Your Honor, Patrol Unit, District 4. "Officer Ruiz," she says gently, "you were present the night of the incident involving the plaintiff, correct?" He swallows. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Judy leans forward just a fraction. "And did you assist in the preparation of the initial report submitted by your department?" The courtroom holds its breath. Ruiz nods once. "Yes." The chief shifts again, ready to interject. But one warning glance from the judge freezes him mid-breath. "Officer," she continues, "did you observe any discrepancies between the original timeline and the one the chief entered into the final report?" Ruiz looks down. His voice shrinks. "Yes, Your Honor." The chief finally erupts. "This is absurd. He is a junior officer. He barely understands." "Chief!" Judge Judy snaps, calm but ice cold. "You will not interrupt my questioning again." The chief's mouth closes, but the rage beneath his skin pulses visibly. "Officer Ruiz," the judge says, returning to the witness, "please explain." Ruiz hesitates. He rubs his palms against the stand. The The chief told me to adjust the wording in the report. He said clarity was important and that the original time would complicate things. The courtroom stirs, a collective exhale of shock and recognition. The chief slams his palm against the desk. That is a lie. Ruiz flinches. The victim flinches. Even the audience recoils. Judge Judy's voice slices cleanly through the chaos. Chief, your conduct is only reinforcing the testimony. Silence returns, heavy and suffocating. The narrator observes Ruiz's trembling hands, the way he pulls them back toward his chest, as though trying to protect what little courage he has left. Truth is dangerous when spoken in front of the person who wanted it buried. Judge Judy nods slowly. Officer Ruiz, thank you for your honesty. Ruiz breathes out, not relief, but survival. Then the judge turns toward the bailiff. There is one more question that must be answered. The chief's eyes narrow, waiting for an opening, but none comes. Officer, she continues, did you create the recording submitted to this court? Ruiz freezes. The chief stiffens. The entire room tilts into silence. Ruiz nods. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Judy's gaze sharpens. Then bring me the original recording. A crackle of alarm crosses the chief's face, small, sharp, and unmistakable. The final mask slipping. Judge Judy adds softly, and we will let the truth speak for itself. He leans back with a sudden, unsettling confidence, the kind that shouldn't exist in a man cornered by his own truth. And that's when everyone realizes he thinks the next piece of evidence will save him. The courtroom feels colder now, as if the air itself is preparing for impact. Officer Ruiz steps away from the judge's bench, his hands still trembling from the act of revealing what was never meant to see daylight. The chief watches him with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes, a smile sharpened into something bitter. Judge Judy adjusts her glasses and nods to the bailiff, who cues up the recording on the small evidence monitor. The machine clicks, hums, then crackles with static before voices begin to bleed through. The first minute plays again, the instructions, the tone, the unmistakable condescension. But now the judge gestures. Continue, she says. The chief pushes his chair back and folds his arms. Go ahead. Let them hear the full context, he says, dripping with smug assurance. The narrator captures the shift, how arrogance, even when wounded, still tries to rise again. It is the last breath of dominance before the fall. Static fades. Another voice emerges, the plaintiff's frightened voice, the chief's voice, dismissive, layered with casual cruelty. And then, it comes. A clear clip, uncut and unedited. Look, she just needs to back off. She's making this bigger than it is. Handle it. Make it simple. The chief watches proudly as if expecting applause. There, now you hear it, he announces. Nothing threatening, just leadership. But the courtroom does not react the way he expects. The audience shifts in discomfort. The victim squeezes her hands together, her eyes stinging. Officer Ruiz lowers his head. Judge Judy studies him with a stillness that borders on devastating. Chief, she says, you speak of leadership, yet what I hear is dismissal. A refusal to take the plaintiff's concerns seriously. He laughs, leaning forward. Judge, that's called efficiency. You don't get to my position by holding people's hands every time they get emotional. The words echo, loud, harsh, and deeply revealing. The narrator notes the shift, not just in the room, not just in the victim's eyes, but in the chief's own unraveling certainty. Judge Judy folds her hands slowly, every movement measured. Chief, this recording does not exonerate you. It reveals a pattern of minimizing, mocking, and dismissing a citizen's legitimate concern. His face drains, the confidence snapping like a wire pulled too tight. That's not what you're twisting. That's not. Chief, she interrupts, voice low, voice final. Context does not help you. It condemns you. The courtroom holds its breath. It arrives with precision. Judge Judy stops the recording mid-sentence, the sound slicing off like a guillotine. She leans in, eyes locked on his. This, she says quietly, is the moment you lost this case, and the moment your own words became your undoing. For the first time, the police chief is not angry. He's not smug. He is simply lost. The words Judge Judy left hanging in the air, the moment you lost this case, cling to him like smoke. He sits frozen, the confidence he weaponized now slipping from his shoulders like a coat that no longer fits. The courtroom watches him with a kind of collective stillness, a recognition that something irreversible has just occurred. The chief opens his mouth to speak, but nothing comes out. The silence is punishing. Even the camera mounted on the wall seems to zoom in closer, its tiny internal motor whirring, documenting every flicker of his collapsing facade. Judge Judy doesn't rush him. She lets him sit in the truth he tried to outrun. "Chief," she says at last, "please explain the comments you made in that recording." He swallows, a hard, visible swallow that slides down his throat like a stone. "Your Honor, those remarks, they were made in frustration. They weren't meant to belittle anyone." The victim looks down, her eyes glistening. He sees her expression, and something inside him stumbles. "Emotions run high in my line of work," he continues, his voice thin, fraying at the edges. "I was venting, that's it." Judge Judy's gaze doesn't soften, it sharpens. "Venting about a frightened citizen? Or venting because you did not want to be bothered with her concern?" He struggles for footing. "I never intended harm. That," she cuts in gently, "is not what your words suggest." He looks around the room as though searching for a single ally, someone to nod, to validate, to justify. But the audience that once feared him now studies him with something closer to disappointment. Officer Ruiz won't meet his eyes. The victim wipes her cheek quietly. The entire courtroom has shifted beneath him, and he no longer knows where to stand. The narrator sees the unraveling clearly. The trembling jaw, the shallow breaths, the slow collapse of a man realizing that power is louder when held, but deafening when lost. Judge Judy leans in just slightly. "Chief, remorse does not erase misconduct. Accountability does." The words strike him harder than any accusation. His hands grip the edge of the table, knuckles whitening. "I made mistakes," he mutters. The admission falls from him reluctantly, like a stone pulled from deep mud. The victim lifts her eyes. She isn't triumphant. She isn't vindictive. She simply looks tired, the exhaustion of carrying truth no one believed until now. Judge Judy continues, voice steady. "Your behavior, on the recording, in your report, and in this courtroom, reveals a pattern of minimizing legitimate concerns. That is not leadership. That is dismissal." Her words echo in the room, filling the silence that follows. The chief's breathing grows shallow. For the first time, he looks small in his uniform, drowned beneath the weight of a truth he cannot reshape. Judge Judy folds her hands and says, "We are not done yet, Chief. Not even close. Do you think remorse should erase guilt, or does accountability come first, no matter the apology?" The chief straightens in his chair, but the movement betrays him. It isn't confidence now. It's survival instinct. Arrogance has drained from his posture, leaving fear in its place. Judge Judy allows the silence to simmer just long enough for the chief to feel it. A silence like this doesn't just linger. It presses, it reveals, it draws every hidden crack to the surface. The chief's breathing grows uneven, his chest rising too quickly, too shallow. The camera above him hums again, reframing, capturing the exact moment a man realizes his authority can no longer protect him. "Chief," Judge Judy says, voice cutting clean but without cruelty, "let us talk about responsibility." He stiffens. The word hits harder than any accusation she could have thrown. "I am responsible," he blurts, "for my department, for hundreds of officers, for—" "Not what I asked," she interrupts. He blinks, a tiny falter, a man used to speaking over people suddenly being spoken through. She leans forward slightly. "I asked about this case. Not your rank, not your years of service, not your title. This case." The courtroom's weight tilting again, heavier on him now, like gravity has singled him out. The victim watches him quietly, her fear replaced by a kind of weary resolution. She is no longer small in this room. He is. The chief swallows, his throat clicking audibly. I followed procedure," he insists, but the words wobble, fragile as glass. Judge Judy slides the supplemental report toward him. "Which procedure allows altering an incident time without documentation?" He exhales through his nose, a shaky, uncontrolled breath. Your Honor, Look, officers make mistakes. Logs get confused. It happens. Maybe someone else? Someone else? She echoes, eyebrow lifting. Who would that be? He stares at the floor. Silence pools at his feet. The audience shifts, uncomfortable. They can see what he's trying to do. They recognize the pattern. A man scrambling for any footing, even if it means dragging someone else down. The narrator lingers on the chief's hands, fingers curling, uncurling, palms damp with sweat. This is no longer the posture of dominance. It is the posture of unraveling. He finally speaks again, but his voice is a thin thread. Maybe Officer Ruiz misunderstood. Ruiz's head snaps up, panic flashing. The betrayal hits him like a blow. Judge Judy's voice cuts like a wire. Chief, blaming your subordinate will not save you. It only reveals your desperation. His breath falters. His eyes dart to Ruiz, to the victim, to the cameras, searching for a lifeline. None appear. The judge gestures to the bailiff. Please retrieve the chief's personal activity log for that evening. The room freezes. The log, the one he insisted didn't exist, the one he claimed he never kept. The chief's face goes pale, bone white beneath the courtroom lights. His hand twitches toward his badge but stops midair, as if the weight of it reminds him that authority is not armor anymore. The bailiff exits through the side door, leaving a trail of dread in his wake. Judge Judy's voice softens but becomes even more lethal. We will compare your log with the official records, and then, Chief, we will see where the truth actually lives. The side door opens again, and the bailiff returns holding a slim, battered notebook. The bailiff sets the notebook on the bench with a soft thud. The chief closes his eyes, not in denial, but in dread. Some truths don't explode. They collapse a person from the inside. Judge Judy lifts the battered notebook gently, the way someone might handle an artifact long buried. Its cover is worn, edges frayed, pages warped from use. This is no pristine record. This is a working log, real, raw, and unfiltered, the kind of document that doesn't lie because it was never meant to be seen. The courtroom stills. Even the fluorescent lights seem to dim, casting the room in a muted glow that pushes the chief deeper into visibility. Chief, Judge Judy begins, you told this court you do not keep personal logs. Her tone isn't accusatory. It's factual, flat, sharp enough to strip away excuses. He swallows. His Adam's apple bobs once, twice, a rhythm of panic. Your Honor, he says, poorly stable, that is not an official log. It's just notes, things I jot down sometimes. Notes, she repeats, flipping the cover open. The pages whisper as they turn, each rustle revealing more than any testimony could. The handwriting is unmistakably his, bold, slanted, often hurried, sometimes underlined with force. A visual confession. The narrator watches his posture shrink, shoulders fold inward, spine curls, hands clasp in front of him like a man bracing for impact he knows he cannot outrun. Judge Judy stops at a page marked with a faint coffee stain. Her eyes scan. She reads silently. And the room holds its breath. Chief, she says carefully, please look at entry number 4. He looks up, startled. What? Entry number 4. Read it aloud. He hesitates, then he leans forward, fingers trembling as he accepts the notebook. The badge beside him catches the light, a harsh glint against the vulnerability in his hands. He clears his throat. It says, Incident call received, 8:21. The courtroom reacts. Quiet shock, quiet confirmation. Judge Judy continues. And your report stated? He can't say it. The words won't come. She says them for him. 8:42. His face collapses by degrees. She turns another page. Entry number 7. Read it. He shakes his head. Your Honor, read it. His fingers tremble so hard the page nearly tears. His voice is barely audible. It says, revised report time to avoid internal hassle. Gasps ripple through the room. Officer Ruiz's eyes widen. The victim's hand covers her mouth. The chief grips the edges of the notebook like it might anchor him, but it doesn't. It drags him under. Judge Judy remains still. Chief, why would you write that? He opens his mouth, but nothing emerges. His breath stutters, uneven, shallow, collapsing in on itself. The narrator focuses on his hands, a lifetime of authority trembling under the weight of one small, battered notebook. Judge Judy turns to the very last entry, circled twice in darker ink, pressed so hard the indentation bleeds through several pages. She doesn't need to read it aloud. It speaks for itself. But she does anyway, slowly. If this ever gets out, I am finished. The words echo through the courtroom. A confession, a prophecy, and now a verdict. The chief looks up, eyes glossy with panic, regret, and the humiliation of being stripped of the illusion he built his identity on. Judge Judy closes the notebook gently, almost mercifully, but her voice is not soft when she speaks. Chief, this log reveals more than misconduct. It reveals intent. You didn't make a mistake. You made a decision. His breath catches, a quiet, broken sound. Judge Judy leans forward. And that decision changes everything about this case, and about you. He finally speaks, not with arrogance, not with fire, but with a voice that sounds like it's collapsing under its own weight. For the first time, the chief is not performing, he's unraveling. The courtroom feels different now, not electric, not tense, but heavy. Like the air itself is thick with the truth he tried to bury, now rising around him, impossible to escape. The chief sits hunched forward, elbows on the table, his badge a cold piece of metal he no longer touches. His breath comes in uneven bursts, barely contained. Judge Judy lets the silence stretch again, not to punish him, but to give him one last moment to decide who he is going to be. A pretender, or a man facing himself. Chief, she says softly but firmly, you may speak. His lips part, but it takes several seconds before sound follows. Your Honor, he stops, his eyes lower, his throat tightens visibly. I didn't mean for it to get this far. The victim watches him with careful stillness, not sympathy, not cruelty, but wary acknowledgement. This is the moment she's waited for, but it is not satisfying. It is unsettling. Watching a man who once towered over her shrink into the outline of his own mistakes. The chief exhales shakily. I didn't think she needed all that attention. People exaggerate. Situations get blown up, I thought. He closes his eyes. I thought I could steer it. Keep it simple. Judge Judy tilts her head slightly. By altering facts? He flinches, like the words physically struck him. I didn't see it that way. Not then. He rubs his face with both hands, voice cracking on the next sentence. I just wanted to avoid trouble. The narrator observes the shift, the arrogance drained fully now, leaving behind something more human and more painful. A man who feared exposure more than truth. A man who hid behind authority so long he forgot what accountability even looked like. The judge's tone doesn't grow softer, but it grows clearer. Trouble, Chief, is not something to avoid at the cost of honesty. Trouble is what happens because you avoided honesty. His shoulders shake, just once. A tremor of someone finally realizing he has no excuses left to hide in. The victim finally speaks, voice quiet. Do you understand what your actions did to me? He looks at her, really looks, not with authority, not with dismissal, but with something raw, something closer to remorse. I see it now, he whispers. I didn't before. I thought you were... He stops and shakes his head. I was wrong. She nods slowly. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, just recognition that the truth has been spoken aloud. Judge Judy leans forward. Chief, you had a choice between responsibility and ego, and you chose ego. He winces, but doesn't argue. You had a choice between honesty and convenience, and you chose convenience. His head lowers. And now, she continues, you have a choice between admitting your wrongdoing or continuing a lie that is already unraveling. He takes a long, shaky breath. I admit it. I altered the time. I told Ruiz to adjust the wording. I tried to make the whole thing go away. His voice fractures, small and thin. I was afraid of looking incompetent. The room exhales all at once, not relief, but realization. The mighty are often undone not by malice, but by fear disguised as power. Judge Judy nods, her expression steady. Thank you for telling the truth, but we are not finished. His eyes flick up, bracing. "There is one more matter," she says, folding her hands. "One that must be addressed before I can rule." The victim rises slowly, as if lifting a weight far heavier than her own body. Her hands tremble, but her voice, when it comes, is steady. The courtroom shifts its focus. For the first time all day, every eye turns toward her, not as a supporting figure, but as the center of truth. The chief watches her stand, shame settling across his features like dust. His authority has fallen. Hers is only beginning to surface. Judge Judy nods gently. "Ma'am, you may speak." The victim takes a breath, a deep, unsteady breath that carries months of fear, nights without sleep, and the exhaustion of being dismissed by someone whose job was to protect her. "Your Honor," she begins softly, "I came to the station scared. I didn't know what else to do." Her fingers tighten around the edge of the podium. "But when I spoke to him," she glances at the chief, but only briefly, "he acted like I was bothering him." The chief's head drops, not out of defiance this time, but out of regret he cannot disguise. She continues, her voice fragile but unwavering. "He told me it was probably nothing, that I was overreacting. He never even looked at the photos I brought. He just brushed me off, like I was wasting his time." The narrator watches the room react, not with shock, but with recognition. This is not the dramatic melodrama of television justice. This is the quiet reality of a person minimized into silence. "I went home feeling stupid," she says. Her voice cracks, but she pushes on. "I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe everything was my fault. I didn't sleep for 2 days. I kept thinking, if he didn't care, why should I?" The chief flinches as if struck. Each word she speaks is a mirror he can't avoid anymore. The victim wipes her cheek quickly, embarrassed by the spill of emotion. "I didn't want money. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted someone to listen, someone to take me seriously." Judge Judy listens without blinking, without shifting, just absorbing the weight of the truth being laid bare. The victim looks directly at the chief now, not with hatred, with hurt. "When I heard the recording, hearing you laugh about me, it broke something. Not because I was offended, but because I realized you didn't even remember me as a person, just a problem, a nuisance." He swallows hard. His chest rises and falls with shallow remorse. "I was afraid to come here," she confesses. "Afraid you'd make a fool out of me again. Afraid you'd twist things. Afraid no one would believe me." The courtroom stays silent. No one moves. "But today," she says, drawing a shaky breath, "I feel like someone finally sees me. Not as a complaint, not as an inconvenience, but as a person who deserved better." Her voice softens. "And that matters." Judge Judy's expression reflects something rare, soft empathy beneath steel discipline. The chief tries to speak, but the judge raises a hand. "Not yet." The victim stares down at her hands. The weight she carried for so long seems to lighten, just a little, as if the room itself finally shares the burden. Judge Judy's voice is warm but focused. "Thank you. Your honesty matters deeply to this court." The victim nods, sinking slowly back into her seat, tired but unbroken. Judge Judy turns her gaze to the plaintiff. "Now," she says, voice steady, "tell me, what outcome brings you peace?" She hesitates, not because she doesn't know the answer, but because peace here is not simple. The victim sits with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her breath slow and deliberate. The courtroom watches her, the weight of her truth still echoing in the quiet. She lifts her gaze to Judge Judy, then briefly toward the chief, who cannot meet her eyes. "Your Honor," she begins softly, "I don't want to destroy anyone's life. I'm not here for revenge." Her voice trembles, but her intentions do not. "I just want acknowledgement, and I want to know that what happened to me won't happen to anyone else." The chief shifts in his chair, shame sinking deeper into his posture. His shoulders slump, his uniform suddenly too heavy to carry. The badge on the table reflects a dull, unforgiving glint under the fluorescent lights, like a spotlight that no longer flatters him. Judge Judy nods slowly. "That's a reasonable request." The victim continues, gathering courage from exhaustion itself. "I want him to understand what he did, not just say he's sorry, but mean it. I want him to realize his job is more than authority. It's responsibility." Her words settle like dust on a still surface, soft but visible. The narrator watches the chief's reaction closely. His jaw clenches, then loosens. His hands, once stiff with power, now tremble faintly against the edge of the table. This is no longer a man defending his reputation. It is a man confronting the cost of the image he clung to. Judge Judy turns her attention to him. "Chief," she says quietly, "do you understand the damage you caused?" He tries to answer. Tries to start strong, but fatigue sweeps through his voice. "Yes," he finally whispers, "I do." His throat tightens. "I didn't before. I wasn't looking at her. I was only looking at myself." A murmur brushes through the room, soft, unsure, like an audience trying to reconcile the man he was minutes ago with the man trembling in front of them now. The judge keeps her voice steady. Understanding does not erase what happened, but it is the first step in ensuring it never happens again. His eyes fill with something raw and human, humiliation, guilt, maybe regret, not performative, not polished, just real. The victim breathes out slowly, perhaps for the first time without fear clouding her chest. The narrator captures the moment, the shift from arrogance to accountability, the collapse of ego, the emergence of truth. Judge Judy folds her hands neatly. This court will address consequences shortly, but before I deliver my ruling, I want to make one thing clear. She pauses, letting the silence frame her words. Power does not exist for your convenience. It exists for the protection of those who need it, and the moment you forget that, your authority becomes a weapon instead of a duty. The chief closes his eyes. The words land with the weight of something irreversible. Judge Judy inhales, preparing to deliver the final blow of justice. She opens her file and says, "It's time for my ruling." Before you hear the verdict, ask yourself, can anyone truly change, or do people just learn to hide their flaws better? Judge Judy lifts her gavel, not as a weapon, not as a threat, but as the final punctuation to a truth that can no longer be twisted. The room leans in, breath held at the edge of justice. The courtroom falls into a silence so complete it feels sacred. The chief sits motionless, shoulders folded inward, his badge lying untouched beside him. The victim holds her breath, fingers knotted together, waiting for validation she has fought months to earn. Even the cameras seem to steady themselves, their quiet motors no longer searching for drama, but for closure. Judge Judy begins with a calm that carries tremendous weight. "Chief," she says, "this court finds that your conduct, before, during, and after the incident, was negligent, dismissive, and fundamentally inconsistent with the responsibilities of your position. Each word strikes with the precision of a gavel itself. You minimized a citizen's fear. You altered factual information. You attempted to influence subordinates into rewriting the truth, and when confronted with evidence, you responded with arrogance instead of accountability." The chief does not argue. He does not speak. He simply absorbs the truth he has spent the entire hearing avoiding. Judge Judy continues, voice unwavering. "The plaintiff is awarded damages for the emotional distress and professional negligence inflicted upon her." The victim exhales, a shaky, quiet breath that releases months of tension from her chest. Tears pool, not from victory, but from relief, from finally being seen. But Judge Judy is not finished. "As for your conduct as chief of police," she says, turning her gaze squarely upon him, "this court will be submitting a formal report to the City Oversight Committee. Your behavior raises serious concerns regarding your fitness to continue in your role." A murmur ripples through the courtroom. The chief blinks once, the smallest flinch of devastation crossing his features. His career, the identity he built, the authority he wielded, has finally collided with consequence. Judge Judy's voice softens but does not weaken. "Leadership is not measured by the power you hold," she says. "It is measured by how you treat the people who need you. Today, you failed that measure." He nods once, barely, because that is all he can manage without breaking. The victim watches him, not with triumph, but with a quiet grace. She does not smile, she does not gloat. She simply sits with the truth that justice, at long last, has reached her. Judge Judy raises the gavel. This matter, she concludes, is settled. The gavel strikes, sharp, final, a sound that echoes across marble floors and into the space where arrogance once lived. The courtroom releases a collective breath. The chief remains seated, staring at the badge as though seeing it for the first time without illusion. Just metal now, no glory. The victim wipes her eyes. Officer Ruiz lowers his head, a man relieved that truth was louder than fear. The cameras pull back slowly, a wide shot of the courtroom, emptied of noise but full of consequence. The narrator lingers on the chief's bowed head, on the victim's trembling exhale, on Judge Judy's steady composure. Justice is not loud. It is not theatrical. It is the quiet collapse of lies under the weight of truth.